What is good, everyone? Welcome back to the Exhaust Notes podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast. My name is Nick Ingval. I'm with my guys, Rohit and Todd, to talk about some racing and some, I guess, no official racing, but lots of racing rumors this week. So what's good, guys? How you doing?
Drive to Survive 2 years from now is going to be so good. That's all I can think of at this point. 2 years from now, guys. Let's just
Are we
wait
still
on
on that train? Are we still excited for Drive to Survive?
I will watch it every year just because it brought me you guys.
It's just from heart emoji. Yeah, we're good. We tried to record last week. We didn't for various reasons, including Hurricane Yay.
Yeah.
And
Kanye got his own hurricane?
Yeah. Wait, we don't mention his name on this podcast.
No, we don't talk about
Voldemort. Yay area is what I was going for. We waited a day and got some more insanity. So I want to start though with some of our favorite talk every year. Let's talk about liveries. So far we've seen McLaren? They just up and said, hey, here's our new car. No fanfare.
Yep.
We saw Williams.
Which, not too bad, actually. I think it's low-key. It slaps, as the kids say. It's going to be very underrated.
Yes. Looks good. Steak.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite.
Steak F1 team Kick Sauber. Right? Is that the order? I'm going to get it by the end of this year.
Sauber Steak F1 team.
And who are those drivers?
No, there's Kick. Where you forgot Kick. Yeah. Hey, look at you can finally say that. And then Haas. So give me a power ranking, each of you, 4-1 out of what we've seen so far. Ro, you go first.
Steak. I'm a vegetarian.
It's the worst and the best.
It's everything everywhere all at once. The only thing that would be even more appropriate is if Michelle Yeoh was one of the drivers on that car. Not only that, if you look at the publicity photos of one Terry Bottas, if he doesn't embrace his future as a Moto X racer in America by the name of Terry Bottas, this allows us to write the fan fiction. This truly is the livery that keeps on giving. I don't know what else I can say about it other than I demand that every team on the grid have their homage to this. But yeah, and I mentioned before, the Williams one looks great. I think Alex Albon is going to continue to be the most underrated driver, and now he has the most underrated car livery to support that. So,
all right, I'm nowhere near Rohit's camp on this. I can't stand that color green. One, I worked at StockX for too long. That color green is just too much. The Seahawks have that color green or a slight shade variation of it, and it just looks terrible. I feel like it's just the most forced color green ever.
It's as extreme as the 90s, and their use of the word extreme. Like
Harold and Kumar? Extreme!
Yeah.
So that's a documentary that's close to my heart. How dare you? No, I mean...
it's just... I actually think the car looks good. If you took that green...
the color blocking looks
The color
good.
blocking is great, but the color itself I don't like.
What color would you put there? I think a tasteful gold would have done wonders.
Yeah, that would have been amazing, right?
God, that would have been so good.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a cryptocurrency, so make it gold.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
$1 billion ideas. You're welcome.
I mean,
Bitcoins.
I feel like, so if I'm going bottom to top, steak is the bottom. I got to go Haas right neck and neck to the bottom of the barrel because they didn't do anything. They were like, we took this panel off. We should probably maybe wrap it in white.
Not even that. It was just, we took some color off. Let's make more black.
Yeah. I mean, to their credit, the carbon fiber looks beautiful on that car when you see the close-up pictures. But you never will see that outside of the beauty pics that we're seeing right now, right? Then
Yeah.
obviously the McLaren car is one of my favorites. The black and orange, the carbon and orange always looks good. I think it's kind of meh. It's like too much the same of like the last few years. And I like the blue on the car. Like the orange and blue is like pretty powerful to me. And then I would put Williams up there, which I text you guys. Like that car is like actually my favorite car so far, leaps and bounds. Like I would be surprised if I see another car that I like better than this one, to be honest. It's too bad we just won't see much of it on camera.
First of all, how dare you, Alex Albon? Oh wait, no, I'll save that for the hot takes episode.
Yeah. So, I'll run through mine real quick. I agree with you. So far, like the color blocking on the stake kick, crypto, whatever, is the best out of all the cars. It's like simple but bold. But that shade of green, even if it was a different shade of green, if it was like
Olive,
like Volt or British Racing green or something, chef's kiss.
Volt would be cool. Like go a little bit more bright on the yellow in that green,
Yeah.
and I would be totally into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'm going to go McLaren in the P3 slot because it is, as you just said, Nick, it's like more of nothing. And you mentioned the blue. There's almost no blue. Like the fact or like my favorite part of the McLaren like color scheme is the orange and the blue contrasting. And the blue that they use is really, really good. Like it's pretty close to like laser blue from Nike. I like that. But that car is not good, and they removed the blue, so it's just orange and black mostly now, and I think for that reason it kind of sucks. Then we'll go Haas in the P2 spot because it's actually doing them more favors, I think, looks-wise, to be more just black and white and further removing themselves from the toothpaste / Russia livery they had a few years ago. Yeah. And then, the Williams livery is by far the best. The copper, what is it? Duracell. There it is.
Duracell.
The Duracell airbox is the coolest, like gimmicky sponsor thing in F1 by leaps and bounds. And they had more prominent Gulf branding on the back of the car, which I love.
So here's like my hot take wish for Formula One. This will never happen, but with Lewis going to Ferrari, which we're going to talk about here, I would love to see Ferrari go away from the all red. Go away from the all red. Take this stake car and just replace the green with red and do like a black, like a primarily black car with rich red accents on a Ferrari would be amazing. Chef's kiss.
They would literally never do that. I think they'd rather have.
But they'll still put
tan
tan interiors in their street cars. God damn it! No,
there's nothing wrong with that. A red Ferrari with tan interior. Come on.
I'm not a fan of tan interior in any car.
I agree with you though.
But,
tangent, but kind of.
I see what you did there.
It's
coming from this tangent.
The special livery they did for Monza, not Monza, because Monza got rained out last year. What was the one with the yellow race suits?
Yeah,
I thought that was Monza. I thought the other Italian race got rained out.
Maybe it was Monza. I'm forgetting which one, but one of them got rained out. One of them had a special livery, and their rear wing was just all black with the white Ferrari logo, and that was awesome. The rest of the car sucked, but that was awesome. Anyway,
it was Monza.
Monza was the one that got because the other Italian GP got rained out, and now I'm just struggling. Was that the Reggiano, or how do you pronounce it?
Wait, Ferrari's race suits 2022 Italian Grand Prix?
Emilia Romagna.
Yeah.
By the way to no-sell my tangent pun there, Todd.
Just blew right past it.
I'm too focused on the agenda, apparently.
This is why you're the professional one of the crew. I appreciate that.
So we had some updates today again about some changes to sprint weekends. So now sprint weekends going forward will be Friday, FP1 and sprint qualifying, Saturday, sprint and the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying, and then Sunday's the Grand Prix. How do you guys feel about
So they
that?
were doing.
So they're literally getting one practice.
Yeah.
But before they would have FP1, then qualifying, then the next day was
The sprint.
FP2
and the sprint.
and the sprint, and then Sunday was the Grand Prix.
I know I'm the new one in the group, and this is probably going to be blasphemous. Do we really need 3 free practices?
I want to say that like having less free practices opens us up to more chaos. Like because they don't have as much time to set up the car.
Fair.
So like a team like Red Bull or Ferrari or Mercedes could like set up the car wrong. And I think we saw that to happen to Max last year, the race that Carlos won when like Max was like all up in his feels about how bad the car was. But the way this is set up is the sprint race will just be like, oh, I qualified third. I'm going to stay in third because I don't want to wreck my car for the race.
I'm just gonna. I got to put this out there. So you're saying the logic for this is the guy who won every race but one had one bad day, so that's why we should.
No, okay. I'm saying theoretically, it gives the team, or it makes it more probable for a team to set up a car wrong, right? However, we did this 6 times last year, and they set up the car wrong once. So is it really giving us that much more chaos that we all want to see?
I think it is because of the fact that it truly forces them to be focused on every aspect of it. Just the fact that Red Bull dropped one race the entire year, and yes, it was a perfect storm in terms of they didn't set something up properly, and Ferrari actually had their shit together for one weekend. But still, that's what constitutes drama in the sport now. And anything that becomes a little bit more chaotic, I think helps this sport, because if I've learned something watching this sport in the last 5 years, it's a sport that prides itself on its normalcy and its consistency. And anything to shake that up, and I'll use the example of Las Vegas, right? I think Vegas was far more exciting of a race because nobody had any sort of experience driving that track. I think subsequent years for Vegas, it's going to be less and less exciting because there's going to be familiarity by the racers in terms of adapting to the track. So anytime I can get some sort of inkling where these guys feel a little bit out of fish out of water, I'm there for it.
But they are going to have to qualify for the Grand Prix right after said sprint race, which means they're not going to want to wreck the car in between
Fair.
sprint race, which means they won't overtake. They won't take chances.
But, I mean, then to me, it still kind of constitutes, and correct me if I'm wrong, like a free practice, because there's nothing substantial happening in free practice unless there's a wreck that ruins somebody's race weekend.
But points, right? You still have points.
You're getting points after the fact, but then at the same time, I do think that's more an infrastructural thing. If they're going to be stupid enough to put the sprint race ahead of the free practice, they're going to reap what they sow. I just think there's no point in having a free practice at all. I go completely off the reservation then, so to speak, where I'm like, just get rid of all free practices except for the one on Friday.
Well, that's essentially what they're doing.
But they're
going to have one free practice for the whole weekend. It doesn't have clarification on when Parc Fermé goes into effect. I'm guessing it's after free practice 1, right? Because you can't
assume. Yep.
Unless they like break it for the GP qualifying if they wanted to. But then the sprint race turns into even more of just a free practice session with closer traffic or whatever you want to call it.
But can I ask you guys this? Because the fact that they are going to be rewarded with the ultimate reward in Formula One season, which is points, is that going to incentivize them to take slightly a little bit more of a risk in the actual sprint? Or do you think it's just one of those things where if I'm on the podium on a sprint race, like you had mentioned, Todd, like I'm good. I'm not going to really mess with this until Sunday if I have to.
I don't think they're not going to like dive bomb each other. Maybe Fernando will because he doesn't care. But like,
this might be some teams, right? And the reason I ask is this might be some teams' only realistic attempt at a point, and so that's where
But they're not going to like. You're not going to. First of all, the points only go to 8. And then second of all, they're not going to like risk it for the biscuit on getting P8 versus starting the Grand Prix in P10 and hoping they can move up and get
Fair.
6 or 7 points. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whatever the point differential is, I don't remember.
Nick, when was the last time you risked it all for a biscuit?
Every day, man. Every day. I think that it's going to be interesting because, like, if they don't, I don't think there's enough free practice, to be honest. Like, I feel like the cars that dominate can dominate on one, Max, Lewis. They can go out and run a handful of laps and be like, okay, cool, feel good. Alonso, even in the Aston Martin, I feel like they have such an advantage with the time that they've been in a seat. If there's only one practice, I think this actually hurts the lowest of the teams more than anything because, you've got inevitably those are the guys that spin out most frequently or end up in the wall or whatever. And now you've basically taken away all of it because they've got Friday early to get to get some free laps in, and then everything else is competition. So those guys have to be more concerned with not getting in the way of the faster cars than they do performing, in my opinion, at this point in the way that things shake out. I know that's not exactly right on a sprint because, I don't think we've had too many lapped cars on a sprint race, but it just seems kind of weird, kind of just a weird decision to me.
Yeah, you kind of just nailed it, Nick. I would happily give back the sprint format for just a normal weekend format because I am, as we all know, a giant nerd and I enjoy and watch the free practices because you can study the team's development through the weekend and see what the drivers are saying between free practices and saying we had it too sharp of a front end and blah, blah, blah. We're going to try to dial that out for the next practice. I actually appreciate that more and double stamp on what Nick said. Like the teams that are understaffed and underfunded, like Haas, Williams, maybe not Stake F1 Kick Team Sauber. I'm going to keep saying it wrong until I get it.
It's okay. I call him Lupe Fiasco. Kick push.
Kick push F1 team. All right. Well, that's what I'm going to say for the rest of the season. Those teams need the practice time more than a Red Bull that's already out of the box as soon as they roll off the plane a second a lap faster than the rest of the field.
Yeah, like what's the logic behind it, do you think? Like, is the logic, hey, we need to get more people watching both days and we need to get more people showing up on Saturdays? And that's why?
I think that's it. I think it can't be anything else, especially...
No. They literally said they want to change the attendance over the weekend at the track.
So...
Because you go for free practice on a Friday on a normal weekend, you can walk around relatively unbothered. Then you go on Saturday, that'll be, maybe double the amount of people there. And then on Grand Prix Sunday, you can't move. Like it's just a sea of people. So they want to, especially for the event promoters, if they're paying F1 like $20 million to host the race, they want to maximize and have, instead of having, 400,000 people for the weekend, they want to have 150,000 people average per day.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think about it, FP1, even sprint qualifying, probably is not on like ESPN in the States, right? Like we probably only get the race.
It is. It's on ESPN Plus.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, and I think ESPN News as well. Like to your point, though, it gets relegated to the outer fringes of the extended ESPN universe, but it's definitely there now. So I mean, I think that is in a way a win for Formula One fans in America. But to your point, like, I get it. They want their product to be front and center as many times as they can. And front and center in this mind, to me, represents at worst ESPN2 and at best ABC and ESPN simulcast.
Yeah, I wonder like if there's just a better way to do it. You know, like the sprint race is interesting to me, but it's not like it doesn't have the same appeal. Like I missed a lot of them because I was just like, man, I'm watching the race. Like I know it's points, but it doesn't have the same like
it feels artificial.
Let me see kind of thing setting up for the weekend. And honestly, like I know this is not really feasible, but I'd almost rather see you run 2 equal races. Like if Saturday is, you know, the Grand Prix of whatever and Sunday is the something or other Grand Prix, and flip the names so you get to see like and make the points equal, because then the teams will come out and like, you know, you still have that same kind of competitiveness both days. I think the sprints, there hasn't been anything. I'll take that back. There's only been a couple of interesting things happen in any of these sprint races over the life of them, right? Like most of them.
Yeah, I was trying to think.
Like,
have we had
mail it in
1 or 2 good ones that we could say?
I was going to say the most historical thing that's happened wasn't Max able to secure his title this year at the sprint race itself and not the major race?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody really knew what was going on. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, you're world champion.
But I mean, like, that's the other thing. Like, we have kind of gone on them, and maybe we go after this tangent by me. We've always gone after the modern day Formula One for creating these artificial narratives. And I think this is just the final example of that, where they're like, we need to do something, because I get the sense that they feel that they're fighting a losing battle, because it almost seems that some of the viewers that they've gained because of the Drive to Survive era are already regressing back to a post-Formula One life and existence. And maybe this is one last hurrah at them to say, no, please come watch us still. We're exciting. We'll make it matter. Please, just come on. Stick with us.
I mean, I guess I'm completely off because Max has won 7 sprint races. Valtteri Bottas has won 2. George Russell has won 1. Sergio Perez has won 1. And Oscar Piastri has won 1. So it is mixing things up better than I thought it was. I was thinking it was like 9 wins for Max and like 2 other drivers. So,
well, I guess they did 3, and then 6 last year.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be 70% Max wins, and it's only like 58% Max wins. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay.
And by win-win for everybody, I mean win-win for Max every weekend.
The win-win. When does he actually win? Saturday.
Going down another hypothetical here, I think if it's me running Formula One management now, or the FIA or whatever, whoever decides this format, if you're going to make an artificial race to like gain interest, go the F2 route, and the sprint race is reverse grid, and not even reverse grid like top 10 reverse grid. Give me the full reverse grid. I want to see that Williams on pole and Max in 20th.
I think that would be interesting. Yeah.
If you want racing and you've only got a third of the distance to make up ground, and they only have a third of the distance to fall outside the top 8.
Do you think the only reason they haven't done that is when Max inevitably makes it look very easy when he comes back from 20th position to get into first position at a third of the distance that you mentioned? Like, that's too discouraging for the other drivers, and that's the only reason why?
He basically does that anyway, right? Like on a Sunday.
I agree. Yeah. No, he absolutely does. But I'm just wondering, like, I'm with you. Like, let's truly shake things up a bit.
Wasn't there a race in like 2018 or 2019 where Lewis lapped the entire field up to like P4 or something like that? It was something insane.
I don't remember. Yeah, he definitely had something like that, but he also had a 20th to 1st victory, right?
And Checo did too.
Checo did too.
Yeah.
Oh, no, so, I mean, I don't think Lewis has, but
Lewis
Checo definitely did. Did he?
Yeah.
You're probably right. I'm not doubting him, even though he abandoned his...
Can we talk about that yet, or what else do we need?
We've got one more thing, I think. A couple more things on these weekend changes or yearly changes. There's now going to be 4 power units per driver. per season. So that means Alpine will take like 1 or 2 less engine penalties.
Hey,
Nice.
And this one I also did. This is the one I wanted to talk about the most. Is DRS to be activated after 1 lap instead of 2, which I think is a bad thing. But I want to get
are we
you
going to
guys'
see
opinion.
more trains?
That's what I'm afraid of, right? Because like especially on race restarts, which I'm assuming this applies to as well. We have race restarts where some people choose to pit and some people don't. So you have a tire offset and sometimes a massive tire offset. If they have, especially in the midfield, if they have DRS after 1 lap, they can, especially a car that's like fast in a straight line, like the Williams or something, say they're in P8 or something. That means P8 through P20 is now just a DRS train. Like I just don't see the benefit as opposed to letting the gap based on the tire delta form a little bit, and then we can have the DRS trains kick in.
I don't know what it is, but there's a really triggering joke about restarts and Lewis and Max that I want to throw out there right now, but I'll just
Don't
leave
do
it.
it. Save it for the midseason.
I mean, I do kind of agree with you, but I've kind of always just thought like, if you're gonna let them have it, let them have it. Like it should just be a thing, or it should not be, right? Like,
Yep.
like there's more issues if we just consistently have DRS trains all the time, right? Like there needs to be other things implemented to change up the pace of these cars and the I guess like that's what I just kind of come back to every time when I think about this. It's like, I don't know if you remember, if you watched like JGTC racing back in the day, but like those cars that had the most interesting, like, so this is like Japanese touring cars. So think like, this is mid 90s. So like literally like Honda Accords, Nissan Skylines, you know, like
Toyota Corollas, Ford Festivas,
Toyota Supras. Yeah. Like a bunch of, but what was interesting is like, if you won a race, you got like a 50-pound addition to your car. Like you literally just carry 50 pounds worth of bricks or whatever, you know, material. And like every time that, like, so if you have a car that's like Max and he's continuing to win, by mid-season, he's at least reeled into the pack and has to drive.
He's actually got a family of 4 inside his trunk.
Yeah. Might even have, I mean, the way he drives, who knows? He might even have like the whole like generational family in the trunk by the time, you know, end of the season rolls around. But I think something like that is more, there's more thoughtful ways to get these cars competitive. I know we talk about it a lot, and my position is like the cars just need to be smaller. They just need to be shorter. The tracks are not big enough for these cars to have like real competitive racing. Like if you go watch any other racing, even like the supercars and the prototype cars in Le Mans racing are significantly smaller than Formula One cars. And like, especially as you go down in size to the P2s and that kind of thing. And then they're racing with, you know, basically overdone street cars in the other classes. So like, it's always entertaining to watch people navigate that. And I think it also challenges the drivers more, in my opinion. The thing that's boring about Formula One right now is that the most dominant teams are just like so far and above the rest of the field that DRS doesn't even really help those lower teams. Like
It doesn't.
You know, like the most interesting thing about DRS to me is when the drivers know that they're helping each other out. And like, that is really fun to see the dynamic of like, oh, you need to be close enough to have this DRS so this guy doesn't pass you kind of thing. I like that, but it's so rare that we get to see that. You know, we see that once, twice a season, maybe out of, you know, 20 weekends. It's kind of like, what's it matter, you know?
That's a good point. If it's going to be there, just let it be there.
Or
let it be there from the start.
Make it more variable. Like, what's the
IndyCar's push to pass? Is that what you're thinking of?
Kind of like that, but I was even thinking, let's just keep DRS, but let's give the teams that are on the bottom, like maybe a little bit less resistance. They get to go another
Easy access or
20%
early
up on the
access.
flap or early access or something where it's like, oh, those guys just need the help to get ahead, where like the cars that are just dominating, you know.
I like this. So if Red Bull needs DRS, they should have to be at least 5 seconds behind somebody. But if it's somebody like Williams, they only have to be half a sec behind somebody before the DRS kicks in. And then based on how good or bad you are as a team, it's a sliding
something
scale.
like that. Yeah. Like based on last week's race position or something, you know, like that could be interesting.
But does that really matter if Max is already in P1 and...
I mean, none of this stuff affects Max the way he's been racing, right?
At this point, the only game in town is if Max gets bored. The minute Max gets bored, we have a competitive season again. But until then, we're all just clamoring for second.
I feel like that's not the case.
Okay, so...
Because we had, before that it was Lewis, before that it was Seb. We had a couple of mixed years, and before that it was Schumacher. So it's like... We're always going to have that one driver with the car.
But to this widespread of domination, because that's the thing I keep coming back to. Because when I ask you guys, yes, Formula One has always been characterized by a dominant figure, but we've not seen dominance like this in a while. Like, there's a very real possibility Max could run the table. And you guys are the Formula One historians. Could that have been said about Lewis in his prime, Schumacher in his prime, where they are a threat to win every race and they're capable of it? Because for once, that number one call out that you guys would always tell me whenever I would say, hey, what's the likelihood of him winning every single race? You guys are always quick to tell me, hey, it's Formula One. Sometimes a lug nut gets screwed a little too tight and that can throw this whole thing off. And then lo and behold, he's P13. It doesn't seem to affect this guy.
I would agree with you if Max runs the table or comes close again this year. Because, like, we could talk about Hamilton in 2020.
No, 2020 is the weird year. So 2018, 2019.
Something like that, right? Where his only competition was Valtteri happily playing
Come on,
second
that's
fiddle.
not competition.
I mean, Valtteri had a couple of poles and then shit the bed, right?
Yeah.
He was quick many weekends. Max doesn't even have that.
So let me throw this out there, Todd, because you made a good point. Like, Max isn't, he's kind of unreachable. But if we had some sort of variable DRS setup, right, then was it in Texas where Lando was up front until halfway through or 2/3 of the way through? Like, imagine if Lando had either 20% more power from that DRS or a little bit early access to that DRS. That race instantly becomes way more interesting. We watch to the very end because it's going to be close, right? Because it's not like it's the back and forth. I think would slow down the whole last quarter of that race, and I think we would see that pretty consistently once the team started understanding how that dynamic played in. Yeah, Max will be way out front, but they've consistently been catching him. Everybody's gotten better as he's dominated, even though it doesn't feel like that. I think everybody on the grid has actually improved pretty significantly, with maybe the exception of Haas. But
that's was there a question in there, or you just want to throw a shot at Haas again?
No. I mean, I just think like if
you're such a Haas-hole.
I guess like in that example of like Lando and Max, what you think if that would work for what we're talking about, right? Because I think that's the one that pops into my head of like, oh, this could have been interesting.
The sliding scale thing there's no like smooth way to interact that. Like, say Red Bull has to be, because they're so far out in front, they have to be within 2/3 of 0.2 of a second, let's say, before they get DRS. That just doesn't physically work for racing. But like, say the only way to really do that is if you changed the DRS system or got rid of that completely and switched to like the IndyCar system of the push to pass. They have a set amount of seconds per race that they can use their overboost function or whatever. It's just extra power from the electric motors, whatever. That's the only way they could do that, right? Because then they could give a sliding scale and say Red Bull has 2 minutes of push to pass, but Williams or Haas or whoever's in 10th has 5 minutes of push to pass. That would then generate that more active passing on the track, because like the way just racetracks works, if you don't get DRS until you're 2/10 behind, and then all of a sudden you get it, you're going to cause accidents and stuff. Yeah. It just wouldn't be safe.
I think it's more like the way I would see it working is like having, they're sticklers about every measurement on the car, right? The DRS flap is checked every race. I think it's something like, Williams is at the bottom. They actually get, like a 50% less drag. Like they're open, like fully open, where like down,
they get like an extra 7 millimeters or something.
And Red Bull is like, 5 millimeters, like something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm sure people much smarter than me could figure that out. But again, then you're getting into the whole like artificial, like why not go to a spec car?
Yeah.
That's what I want to see, right? Like you mentioned, it's about the car being too big, not raceable on most tracks. There's a very small selection of tracks that these cars actually fit on. So let's make the car smaller and lighter while hopefully keeping it as safe, and then everybody be happy. Okay, last thing to talk about before we talk about the huge news, and it's more of just a mention. Christian Horner was on the Epstein Island list. No, I'm just
allegedly.
Christian Horner is under investigation from Red Bull proper, not Red Bull Racing, but Red Bull proper, for alleged
inappropriate allegations made by a female person.
Something, yeah.
We don't even know.
Red Bull.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that's the thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Ro.
No, I was just going to say this. We don't know to what extent are the behaviors that Mr. Horner may or may not have done. But at the same time, we are trying to be very careful as a podcast because, A, we want to bring light to it, but we also are going to reserve comment until more information is being brought to the surface. Because right now, it seems like it's a lot of speculation, and I don't think any of us want to get a part of that speculation, especially when the story may or may not come out and we were all grossly wrong about what we thought he did or did not do.
Yeah, I think, best case scenario, he's a dick to work with, which I think is probably almost a guarantee. And worst case scenario, we will talk about if it comes to pass.
Yes.
Yep.
That being said, if you want to hear our true thoughts, you can find it on only. No, we're not going to do that. I was told not to do that.
Other slightly big news item. Instead of saying America, fuck yeah, they said fuck America to Andretti Cadillac F1 team. What do you guys think's going to happen from here? There's probably some legal battles coming or something, which isn't a good way to enter a sport and have everybody else on the grid hate you. What do you guys think about Formula One management saying F you to Andretti?
Well, I sarcastically threaded, since I wasn't on Twitter, I threaded the announcement and said that I can't wait for Andretti to buy Haas and hire Gunther Steiner as their team principal. But I got a bunch of that's not going to happen from the.
Are you telling me the internet can't figure out sarcasm and or a joke?
Yeah, they can't. But to be fair, I see so many ridiculous things about Formula One on the internet. I probably should assume that I was saying something in seriousness too, but obviously not enough people are listening to the podcast. So please share this episode so the people that can't understand our sarcasm on our social accounts can understand it by listening to us for a couple hours a week.
Total voice matters, folks. Or /S on the post.
Yeah.
Pro tip.
Yep.
I mean, I don't see them. This may be an overreaction, but I don't actually see them joining Formula One now, and that's a shame. Unless what you said comes to pass. Yeah. I don't see them becoming an 11th team, even in 2026 or whatever, or 2028, I think they said.
So is this Formula One or FIA? This is Formula One that denied them, right?
Yep. Sorry, Rohit's camera just took a skydive. Or it was
That,
upset about the Audi.
No, that's the free fall Formula One thinks it's going to be by allowing an 11th team on the grid. And here's to say it's not going to happen. Just let people race. Like, I don't understand this, but go on, Todd.
No, I don't see them joining F1 now because I don't think like the whole plan was that they were going to join in 2026 with a customer power unit. Everybody speculated it was pretty much well known that it was going to be an Alpine customer engine agreement. And then while Cadillac / GM developed their own power unit. And that was kind of the reason that Formula One management, it wasn't the FIA, because the FIA / Bin Sulayem MBS gave the approval, and then it went on to Formula One management, and they said no, because you're not bringing anything to the sport. We're actually giving you credibility, not the other way around. But if you brought an OEM, giant like GM / Cadillac to the table, then you're bringing credibility and value. Blah blah blah. The thing that pisses me off so much is I know that we have the majority of our fan base is from the Drive to Survive era and after, but if you remember, like the early 2010s, they were like begging teams. We had at one point 2 different Lotus teams on the grid because they just couldn't field enough cars and they wanted the cars. I just don't understand why they think in the long run, and the teams are so against the splitting the pot now to see the value increase if they're trying to go after the American market so hard. We now have 3 American races and supposedly a 4th on the way, Chicago.
But maybe
I just, how can they not see that the value add there to bring an American team to keep the American interest for the sport? They want all of our money and all of our fandom, but they don't want us to fight in there. Yeah, sorry.
My thought is apologies. My thought is this: I think they've done the math, and I think they've realized whatever value that we as a geo North America could provide them, we no longer provide that. So I think, is this their way of kind of saying, no, we're not going to succumb to the whims of this quote unquote new fan base that's going to open up the world to us because it's already cooling off. So maybe if we were still kind of in the throngs and the popularity of Formula One at its apex, it might have gone through, but maybe this is them doing a bit of damage control on the back end.
So as a huge fan of sports car racing, I just find it ridiculous that the logic that was presented was if it was Chevrolet, then maybe we'd consider it. But since it's just Cadillac, that's not a big enough commitment from the company or whatever. Because Cadillac's been racing for a long time, right? Like Cadillac won 4 straight 24-hour Le Mans, 2017 to 2020. They've raced in like sports car racing and IMSA for 20, 30 years now, at least, like close to 30 years, I think. And I think they even raced the North Star stuff when those cars came out in the 90s as sports cars, which is bananas to think you're taking those big boats from the street and popping that V10 or whatever into a prototype car that's tiny. But they have a pretty good history of racing. I think the interesting thing is, nobody thinks about Chevy. Don't get me wrong. Corvette has that same parallel history in sports car racing with Corvettes, but they never race prototype cars, which is more similar to racing Formula One, in my opinion. I think the interesting thing about it is if you really wanted to capture the racing audience that exists right now, you need to get those people from sports cars into Formula One. If you're going after Chevy and not Cadillac, then you're going to go after NASCAR And yes, there's big dollar sponsors there. And yes, the company probably throws more money at NASCAR, but that type of racing is nowhere near the same audience, right? Like, you know, I don't want to pick on him, but when Dale Jr. raced at, Sonoma 20 years ago for the first time, caught the car on fire somehow. So like, like sometimes people need to experience not driving in circles. But like, enough of my shit talking NASCAR. I get the marketing genius behind the whole sport, but I don't think that aligns with what Formula One is, which is the weirdest part of that whole statement around it. Because to say that Andretti, who already has successful teams in other racing bodies, and the family connection to Formula One throughout those years prior, right? It's just like, it seems really almost like targeted.
Short-sighted?
Yeah, like definitely. It just seems odd to me. Like, it seems like there's more to it, right?
It does feel like, that's what I was saying, like, from the start, it does feel like they want our fandom and our money, but they don't want us to have a seat at the table. Because I don't understand. I do understand that they say that it gives Andretti more cred, let's say, because they're now at the pinnacle of motorsport, because everyone thinks, F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, and they're not wrong. But if they're already successful in all those other racing, they're successful in IndyCar, they're successful in sports cars. I believe they have Le Mans entries. I think they're in Extreme E or whatever that thing is. They're in the Formula E. They're all over the place. Like, they have enough street cred, whatever you want to call it, in racing that Formula One's not really adding much. If anything, both can be true. They're giving Andretti cred, but Andretti is also bringing a massive audience to Formula One potentially.
Why do you think Ferrari races Formula One? Because it gives them credibility. It's like, this is a give and take relationship with every fucking team on the grid. Like, not to mention that you have the son of a former Formula One champion trying to put a team on the grid. You are already like the most incestual sport on the planet, because it's such a gatekeep happy, like, oh, if you're not the son of a driver or the godson of a driver or handed the keys to the Formula One car, you rarely get in, right? Like, that's why Lewis is so special to me. And I think that's the weirdest part about this is like, it's not just like maybe pushing away the American audience. It's actually like kind of in a way pushing away one of the people that, that was a part of the sport for
that
so
set
long.
The table.
I get that Mario is not like signing the checks for this team, but like, that's like saying that Mick Schumacher paid his own way, like, it's just, that's not how it works. If the name is associated with racing, the family races, in my opinion, right? Like, we've talked at length about Carlos Sainz going to Audi because of his father racing for Audi in a completely different world right now. But for some reason, they're like, we're going to give you too much credibility over there. Just doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't.
I would just say this. We've mentioned Carlos Sainz. We've mentioned Lewis Hamilton. We've mentioned Ferrari. Let's just get to it, because I don't think that there's anything that three of us can say in this episode that's going to change anybody's mind. And then at the same time, if they're stupid enough to make this proclamation, let them live with it. Because 3 years from now, when it's just the three of us talking into our phones, thinking that there's a semblance of an audience, and there's not because they dropped the ball with this Andretti thing, we're going to be like, those bastards. This could have put all of our respective kids through college had they actually put Andretti on the grid. But because they didn't, it's just three yahoos talking.
All right. Let everybody know how to find you outside of the show.
You can find me on Instagram at RoadM13, on Threads at RoadM13, on X at Roheezy, on Blue Sky at RoadM13.
On Instagram at dadshoe.jpg, on Thread at dadshoe.jpg, on Twitter, dadshoe_JPEG.
You can find me at Nick Ingval on all the platforms. More importantly, follow Exhaust Notes FM on all the platforms. And the first link in the description will get you in the Discord. Appreciate you listening, watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.